before we get too much further, I want to look at some royal acts and letters, documents coming out of the French monarchy and the chancery. And I'm going to start with a letter, a mandement patent from Henri IV, from, well, we'll see the date, 1609. And just going to read the beginning and the end, because those are the parts that are helpful for classifying documents. And we'll go through that and then look at how you would use those to classify the document, and then what that helps you with down the line. So we have a pretty standard start. Henri, par la grâce de Dieu, roi de France. Next line est de Navarre. And then we have à nos amis et feuillots conseillers. And so two things to note. There's first the aimé, A-M-E-S, et feuillots. That's a very formulaic thing found in some types of documents, not others. And no, so it's in the plural. Again, something that gives you a clue as to what type of document it is. Nos amis et feuillots conseillers, les gens tenant notre cour, again, plural, de Parlement à Paris, salut. And that's also something that is sometimes in a document, sometimes not. It might help you classify it. And then we get into what's called the text. The beginning is called the protocol, initial protocol. Then we get to the text, and it's ayant fait voir en notre conseil, and so on and so forth. And that's what we would call the body. Protocol, initial protocol plus the text plus the final protocol is the teneur. It's the entire contents. Now we get to the end, and starting 5 lines up, you have car tel est notre plaisir, and that could be a sort of corroboration, but there's specific formulas of corroboration that can precede the date. But then we get to the date, and it begins with donné. Again, whether the date begins with donné or not will help you determine what type of document it is. À Paris, some have the place and some do not. Le premier jour, so some have the precise date. D'août, the month. L'an de grâce 1609. So we have the complete date. Some documents might have just the month and year. Some might have omit the year. It'd be the month and date. That will vary depending on the type of document. And then it says, et de notre règne le 20e. So he gives us both the Christian year and the year of the reign. Again, that is another clue as to what type of document it is. And then at the very bottom, signé par le roi en son conseil, fait et scellé sur simple que. We'll talk about what that means, but single tail as opposed to a double, or les lacs de soie, the threads of silk. Sur simple que du grand sel, so it's not the sel secret, the sel de dauphin, the signé du roi, it's the grand sel. So this means it comes from the not from the king's personal desk, but from the chancellerie. And then du grand sel, and then finally de cire jaune. So that means it's not the seal is in yellow wax. Actually, that would mean natural wax. So in Latin, it's cera alba, and in French, cire jaune, because it's just it really means uncolored wax. If it were in green wax, cire verte, that would indicate a perpetual act. So, for example, a recognizing a property right that would last in perpetuity for a monastery or something. And if it were in red, that would indicate it came from the king's personal desk without passing through the chancellery. And also, though we can't tell that from just a photocopy, but if it's simple que du grand sel, it means it's open. So open, in other words, it's not folded and sealed in the way that we would think of a sealed letter. So that means it's patent. It's a there's basically lettre patente et lettre close, and this is a type of lettre patente. I'm not sure that's technically true. It's a mandement patent in any case. Okay, so how do we use this info? This is a handy chart from Bernard Barbiche of the École des Chartes, which I will share with you. But basically we have the three types of open letters, and then we have some closed letters, and then more open letters that are personal from the king. So these are all, you can see red or black ink, wax. These are green, yellow, yellow. So if we look through what we know about this document so far, it's a photocopy, so we don't know if it's on parchment or paper, and anyway, we don't know. So parchment being, an animal hide, and paper being fiber. Since we just have a photocopy, we don't know if it's open or closed. But when we get to the type of seal, grand sceau, we know it's the grand sceau. So it's one of these. It's not the sceau secret or the signet. So it's got to be one of these three. The wax is yellow, so we know it's one of these two. And it's a simple tail, so we know it's this. So it's got to be a lettre sur simple que, a mandement. And then if we corroborate that with the language, we get the address is either particular or collective. It's collective. It's les conseillers du Parlement de Paris. And then the person writing is first person plural, as we saw. And then we get to the date. It begins with donné, so that's again an indication that it's one of these, as opposed to, say, a lettre de cachet that begins with écrit, or une lettre de roi that begins with fait. So donné, and then place name, yes, we have it. Basically every form of document will have that. And then the date, the date number, quantième. Pretty much everything except the most important grande lettre patente will have that. Month, yes. Year, yes, as almost everyone will. And then, but year of the reign, that's only for these open letters. For the ones that are coming more from the personal desk of the king, no. And then, and so that's pretty strong that we're dealing with a simple mandement. Now, what does that mean? There's a lot of places we can go, but we'll just start with Bautier, Typologie diplomatique. It's for a somewhat earlier period, but I think it's mostly the same. And this is from a book that's available on the École des Chartes website that I can share with you. So we know, or we guess, that we are dealing with a mandement, lettre scellée de cire jaune sur simple que. So seems right. And this is what that looks like. I'll show some more, but simple que just means that they take the bottom of the parchment, which, remember, it's parchment, not paper, so it's quite sturdy. So they just cut it with scissors about 2/3 of the way across, and then put the seal on the tag that's hanging down. That's the simple, la simple queue, as opposed to the double that you can see here, not very well. I'll show others, where you have a piece of parchment that runs through a hole in the parchment, and the wax seal is attached to that that piece, that double queue. And notice that there are certain things. It says l'adresse en est particulière à notre amie et féale ou bien collective. So, but this is a formula we saw. It's followed by a salut, which we saw, and it typically doesn't have a corroboration, so nothing like, well, we'll see some corroboration types, I think. And then usually it doesn't mention the type of seal unless there's some sort of substitution. But in this case, for whatever reason, it does mention that it's not like the example Bautier gives is donné sous le sel de notre secret en l'absence de notre grand. But in this case, it is the grand sceau, but nevertheless was in the document. So I don't know. That could be a difference caused by being 300 years later, 200 years later. But anyway, that gives you kind of a sense of, like, now you know what type of document it is. And the type of document will help you read that. In fact, I'll see if I can bring one up. But like this formula here, salut et dilection. Dilection, that's not a word that I would typically know, but because you know that that's a possible formula, it makes it easier to read that when you see it in a document. If you want, you can get really deep in the weeds with some of this stuff. The Morel book, which has a lot of history of the Chancellerie and how it was formed and the personnel and so forth. But it also has, let's see, chapter after chapter. It's over 600 pages long. And you have, let's see, you have how the scellage des actes begins on page 192, and we're still talking about the different ways of applying the seal. So it's, 100 pages, over 100 pages on using the seal and signet. So, a lot of detail if you really want it. And you can get things like this little tidbit on the cire verte, and the difference between cire verte, cire jaune, and I think I mentioned that cire verte is for perpetual acts, cire jaune for more normal acts. And, again, you can just keep going down the rabbit hole. There will be articles on given types of documents. So if you're studying a document it's called a règlement, you can go to, an article like this by Hélène Michaud. All kinds of rabbit holes you could go down. But if you look, Michaud talks about this book, which I've mentioned before, talking about the calendar and dates, Giry, Manuel de Diplomatique, and we'll just take a quick look at. So Giry is kind of it's from 1894, but it's still one of the classic books for making for helping you understand documents and classify them, and looking up problems like figuring out what it means when they use one date, according to a saint's birthday or something like that, and you can look things like that up. And it will actually, I'll just show you that, again, incredible detail. This is just about the parts of a document. And page 479, let's see, we're at the final protocol. And then we have so almost 200 pages on the form of documents and the type of seals and stuff like that, and some things about the format of a document, and what form the salut can take, and mostly in Latin. Most of his examples are in Latin, but not always. And just a tremendous amount of detail if you really want to get in there. And and again, it can just help you if you know what the document is. It'll help you figure out how to read it, how to situate it. It'll help you know whether it's coming from the king's own hand or from the chancellor, and so on. Because again, Sieur Verte, that's going to be coming from the chancellor. So it can really help you understand a little bit more about the document if you have that type of information, particularly if you have the physical document. So this is the lac. I guess we'd say twine, silk twine with the green wax. So that's a lettre patente, and the Great Seal. Here's the simple queue, and this is it's I guess looks like a red wax, but this is from the Duc de Berry, so it's not. I guess it might still be personal, but it wouldn't follow exactly the same typology as the French. But it's documents, but it's a good reproduction. And here's one. Let's see. And here's one. This is again from the Duc de Berry, so the colors wouldn't have the same meaning as they do for the monarchy, but you can see what's called the double tail, and it goes through the hole in the paper and then comes back out the other side and is bound together. And here's an interesting one. This is from Henry III of England and 23 barons who agree to recognize Louis IX as an arbiter in their disputes. This is just off Wikipedia, but you can see it's a very it's the simple tale, but many of them. So normally in a document out of the chancellery, of course, it would just be one cut about 2/3 the way across. But anyway, there are some of these multiple tales. And then this is back to Bautier. I mentioned that our document, the Mandement, did not have a corroboration. So this is a formula of corroboration, basically saying something like, in witness of this, I have put my great seal on it, is the type of thing that you would expect. And then that's corroborating that that there should be a great seal on it. So it's in the content, and then in the letter, or saying that it's in perpetuity or whatever. Now here we'll go back to one that's quite a bit older. This is from 1300, so it's Philippe, par la grâce de Dieu, roi de France. And then we have à tous ceux qui se présentent lettres verront salut. And I think it's before the formulas are totally fixed, but this ces présents lettres verront, that's a formula that is different from the one that we saw and indicates a different type of document. And we can just shortcut all that because this one still has its green wax with the silk attachment. And also it has the corroboration. En témoin de quelle chose nous avons fait mettre notre sel en ces présentes lettres. So that's the corroboration that was missing from the previous one. And then we have donné, so it's D-O-N-Y, but donné. So beginning with the donné, as we would expect, à l'abbé de Longpont, something like that. Le mardi devant la fête de Toussaint, I think. Should be feminine though. Anyway, some feast. I'd have to look that up. L'an de grâce 1300. So we have no indication of the year of the rain, but again, we're back in 1300, so we don't have the formulas totally set. But we have our elements that we would expect from the grande lettre patente. It's got the hanging seal, it's got a corroboration, it's got a donné, and it gives the full date, and so forth. Okay, one more, just to show you what I meant about learning the formulas of salut, but not salvation. But so this is let's see, 1320, so 1320. Philippe, par la grâce de Dieu, roi de France, de Navarre. Then we have our à nos aînés et Féo, les évêques de Laon et de Meaux, l'abbé de Saint-Germain-des-Prés, le comte de Foral, Pierre de Dissy, et Thomas de Marfontaine, nos conseillers. And then we have Salut, and then we have D-I-L-T, which is something that I wouldn't get normally, except because of Bautier and Giry. I know that Salut et D-I-L something has to be dilection, which means grande affection. And then just as we normally see, same thing in the signature. Donné à Paris le second jour de mai, l'an de grâce 1320. And then no year of the reign. I think that is something that comes into later documents. But and I would have to guess that this was probably, it could be a fragment, but it could have been could be something where the seal was cut off I don't know, by some trophy hunter. I'm not really sure. Again, it's one of the problems with not having the physical document. But by using those resources that I showed, we can figure out, what type of document it is, and therefore, what import and authority it has, where it's coming from, whether from the king's own hand or from the chancellor, and so forth. And all of those help you take these documents that are in the name of the monarch and understand what their purpose and import is.